So welcome to the People Performance Podcast, where we discuss all things people performance. The People Performance Podcast is made up of 3 series. First up, we have the Leader Lounge episodes with me, the founder. Then we have the guest interview episodes. And finally, we have the performance episodes delivered by the T2 consultants. If after listening to our podcast, you want to get in touch with T2 about anything we do, please contact us at help@trans2performance.com. You can stream or listen to our podcast on all the usual platforms available. So for now, sit back, tune in, and enjoy the People Performance Podcast. So welcome back to the Leader Lounge with me, Martin Johnson, CEO and founder of T2. In this episode, we're going to talk about optimal performance and why optimal performance is probably relevant for nearly every team and organization on the planet, how it differs from peak and high performance models, and more so we're going to talk around within optimal performance, why it's so important to lead and perform in drudgery. That term I will explain shortly. But also, what are the attributes that we see in really good optimal performers where they show up in drudgery, get through the tough times, and lead their teams and organizations to success. So let's start at the beginning. So the first performance model that a lot of people talk about, and you'll have heard this on leadership courses or on social media, you'll have seen it on YouTube, LinkedIn, there's lots of influencers talking about it, it's peak performance. And you see a lot of stuff at the minute, which is peak performance this and it's peak performance that. What is peak performance? Well, peak performance occurs when a team or individual meticulously plan to peak at a certain point in time in future, in fact, an exact point in time in the future, to achieve a desired result or outcome. Now, peak performance, as you can see on the graph, means the flag's on the hill and we're aiming to peak at that exact point. In order to do this, you need high predictability, you need a high degree of control in your environment, you need low uncertainty around you, you need to be highly resourced with low distractions. Now, does that sound like your organization or the team you work in or your life? It doesn't, does it? None of us are blessed with all of those things. So it's very difficult to be able to peak. And when you peak, there's always a crash at the other side. Now, the only environment I probably would use as an example of where peak performance can occur is Olympic programs. Olympians know they're competing 4 years in advance in an event or events. They therefore can work back 4 years and meticulously plan to train and develop to peak at that exact point in time. Quite often they're in a program which is highly resourced, highly controlled with low distractions. They have every resource available to them to succeed. And therefore they're aiming to peak to the maximum of their performance level at that certain point in time. But in most cases, peak performance is difficult to achieve. And so I always like to say to people, just forget that model for now. Some of you out there it might be relevant for, but for many it is not. And now I'm going to switch to optimal performance. So as you can see on this graph, what we talk about a lot at T2, in fact, I would go as far as saying that our entire methodology is built on helping organizations and teams to achieve optimal performance. So what is optimal performance? Well, optimal performance occurs where a team or individual responds to the daily situations they face and they do the best they can with the time they are given and the resources that they have. And that's a really powerful thing because there'll be many people watching this now who go, yeah, that's what it's about, right? Optimal performance says that you can't predict the future all the time. Things don't always go well. You don't always have the resources at your disposal, and you certainly don't always have the right amount of time. So sometimes you've just got to do the best you can, right? You've got to pivot, you've got to move, you've got to make decisions. You've got to do the best you can with the time you're given and the resources you have. This is something we used to talk a lot about in the military. No plan survives first contact, and therefore you've got to think on your feet and perform optimally to still achieve the goal, the desired outcome. And as you can see on this graph, there are periods of that which look like flow. Flow is things are going well, we're executing to a high standard, it's a great outcome. whatever it might be, it was controlled. Drudgery is the other segment you can see. That is where things are not going well. You're doing it tough. You're papering over the cracks. It's arduous. It's not pretty, but we're still trying to move forward. And life's a little bit like flow and drudgery for many people, isn't it? As is our careers. There's elements of flow that we love, and there's lots of periods and moments of drudgery. And if you've ever gone home at the end of the week and you've thought, what a tough week that was. We achieved things, but God, I'm tired. It didn't feel great. We were literally papering over the cracks. That's what drudgery can feel like. And so optimal performance, I think, is the model that describes the majority of teams and organizations that we work with. So why is that important? Let's look at the next model, high performance. So if you flip optimal performance up on an angle, and you can see that on this graph, all we've done is flip it up on an angle and put that flag on the hill, which is really important to have that goal, that destination. Then high performance occurs when an individual or a team can maintain an optimal performance state for a duration of time whilst remain aligned on the goal. So they can maintain flow and drudgery, because that's what life's about. But they're so focused on that flag on the hill, and they don't forget where they're heading, that they're more likely to be able to deal with drudgery well and dig in when it occurs. So high performance is the byproduct for continuous optimal performance. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because if you think about peak and high performance, and everybody always talks about peak and high performance and achieving high performing teams, it can become quite overwhelming. It can become quite daunting because it doesn't reflect what you experience day to day. So you can become demoralized with this constant talk of peak and high. Optimal performance is much more digestible because we're saying life's not perfect. You don't have all the time, all the resources, and things don't go well all of the time. So you're going to have periods of drudgery and you're going to have moments of flow. You've got to be able to learn which one you're in, dig in and get yourself out of it. And you've got more chance of doing so if you're very clear on where you are heading and what that flag on the hill is. And the high performance outcome, if you do stay the course, will be the byproduct of continuous optimal performance. So that's the modeling. And at this point, I'll probably say a bit of a statement. If you was to say to me, Martin, what is the universal attribute or the universal thing you see in leaders over the 2 decades you've worked with them and teams, what's the one thing that is always present? I would say it's that great leaders and people who succeed show up and perform in drudgery, because they're not needed in the good times. Leaders and influential people are not needed in moments of flow and when things are going well. The team are already flying, they can be empowered, and they're delivering. But it's when things go wrong, and it's when we have problems, a lack of resources, when we have to fix issues, that's where some of the best leaders show up in drudgery and they lead their teams through it. So what are the attributes for drudgery? And it's not even just about leaders, it's about anybody watching this who goes through periods of drudgery, which everybody does. What are the main attributes that I see in people where when drudgery arises, they are displaying these things to not only get themselves through it, but to lead other people through it as well? The first attribute for drudgery is courage. Courage is the ability to manage fear and anxiety, to confront danger, difficulty, or pain. And therefore, if you think about that, courage is not the absence of fear, which many people think it is. But courageous people don't have fear. So wrong. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is your ability to step into fear to step into difficulty despite the fear. And I say this to my son all the time. He plays rugby. He's only 10. Sometimes he says, Dad, I'm scared. And I say, I know you are. I would have been scared at 10 as well. Rugby's a very physical sport. I said, but he thinks he's not courageous or he's got no courage or bravery. I say you have high courage because you step onto that field and get stuck in and perform despite being scared. That's courage. And so if you want to understand the first attribute required to lead in drudgery or lean in or take charge or influence, it's have the courage to step into difficulty, danger, or pain and discomfort despite the fear you are feeling. That's courage. The second attribute people display when working through drudgery is discipline. Now, that's a word that I'm very synonymous with the military. A lot of people think military people are disciplined, which we are. And you're either that naturally when you join up or it's drilled into you over a period of time. But what is discipline? Discipline is the ability to remain steadfast and focused to achieve a result or outcome despite any form of delay. So there's two types of discipline as well. I always like to dissect it like this. There is self-discipline and there's discipline. Self-discipline is about me persisting, self-discipline is about me resisting temptation. Temptation to bail out, temptation to take the easy path. It's about being self-disciplined to stay in the drudgery. It's internal, it's self-discipline. Discipline is about accomplishing the task. So if I'm remaining disciplined and on task, it's an external discipline to see the job through. The two are intrinsically linked. But the second attribute that people display in drudgery is discipline. And that is the ability to remain steadfast and focused, especially when you're in drudgery, because you remain focused on the outcome you want to achieve. The third attribute we're going to talk about is resilience. Now, this is one that when I say to people, what is resilience, they often describe other attributes. So they'll describe things like durability and grit and persistence, which we'll come to. But resilience is none of those things. Resilience is quite a unique thing on its own. It's the ability to return to your baseline emotional and mental state after a stressful, traumatic, or even triumphant event. So what that means is we all have that. I talked about the neutral state on another episode. We all have that even keel, that baseline emotional and mental state where we're neither in triumph or adversity. If we encounter drudgery, quite often we'll become compromised under the pressure and duress. So we come off our baseline state. Our autonomic nervous system fires up, cortisol, adrenaline. We become potentially compromised and triggered. We deal with the challenge. And then in the aftermath of that, people with high resilience will return to their normal baseline state and carry on. If you've got low resilience, that situation or event in drudgery that has knocked you off means you can't get back to your baseline quick enough. So that can lead to you being in a predisposed position for more triggers. And if you sat there watching this and you think, something pisses me off in the morning and then something else does and something else does, and before I know it, I've lost the day, that's maybe because you've got low resilience. Think about it like an elastic band. If I pull an elastic band out wide and let go, it will return to its normal shape because it has high resilience. If I squeeze putty in my hand really tightly and let go, it will not return to its normal shape because it has low resilience. Well, your brain and our mindset is the same. Some of us have the capacity after a triumphant or traumatic experience to return to baseline and crack on. Some of us, it affects us for a little bit longer. But people who deal with drudgery and who operate well in drudgery tend to display a level of resilience. In the aftermath of any challenge, they get back to baseline and it's business as usual. The final one I'm going to talk about is persistence. Persistence is that firm or determined continuance in a particular course of action, time and time again, trying despite delay or opposition. So if courage is giving us the ability to step into discomfort and deal with it despite the fear, and discipline is our ability to remain steadfast and focused on it, resilience is in the aftermath of any challenges, we're going to bounce back and not dwell on it. Well, persistence is to that flag on the hill, we're going to keep going again and again and again until we end up getting there in our endeavor. And not everybody has that in abundance. And therefore, sometimes with too many knocks, too many drudgery moments, they can tend to bail out or give up. Whereas with persistence, we will keep going as long as that flag on the hill is there. So that's a short episode on optimal performance. Just to recap, to summarize, and I want you to think about this in terms of your teams, your life, your situations at the minute. Peak and high performance can become daunting. They can become terminologies synonymous with courses, YouTube, TED Talks, motivational videos, whatever it might be. And everybody thinks they need to be in the game of high-performing teams. It really is an illusion because it doesn't match everyday life. Trust me, we are all in the business of optimal performance. We are all in the business of navigating the ebb and flow of drudgery and flow, whether it's life or in work. We don't always have the time. We don't always have the resources that we would like to have. We don't always experience things going well. We can't always predict challenges and obstacles. And so optimal performance is the best we can hope for. It's a question of how you show up in drudgery, how you lead in drudgery. That counts. It's a question of if you have that clearly defined flag on the hill that is going to galvanize the group and say, that's where we're heading, so we're going to dig in. And it's also a question of, can you dial up the attributes or build the attributes required to perform in drudgery and lead yourself and others through it? Those attributes are courage, discipline, resilience, and perseverance. There's many more that's at play here, but them four are crucial if you're going to perform in drudgery. So think about that, reflect on it as always, stick some comments on this video, and if there's any questions, we'll answer them. If there's anything you want me to talk about in more depth in a future episode, I most certainly will do. But that's all I'm going to leave you with for now. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll be back shortly with another Leader Lounge episode.
The Leader Lounge with Martin Johnson, brought to you by T2.